I carried her dream on my back for 6 years, like a mule bred for sacrifice and fidelity. It wasn't easy. She used to grasp my hand with ink-stained fingers after studying, until it felt like pride at first. At midnight, I muttered, "Thank you for believing in me, Marcus." I had faith in everything. I worked double shifts, postponed vacations, and said no because I firmly believed in it. Due to promotions that forced me to move, I used every bonus check to pay for her tuition and textbooks. With those countless necessary costs that appeared every single semester in medical school, when her student loan. When her car broke down, I sold mine and took the bus. So, I co-signed without hesitation when her application was rejected. She experienced breakdowns during finals, and I stayed up with her as she used a cracked laugh and a hot lunch. But I was more than simply her spouse. I was her support system, her source of funding, and her crisis intervention team, her human Xanax. I used to make a joke about being her sponsor rather than her partner. We would laugh, mainly because it was somewhat true, and also because it was painful to utter out loud. But I never said it. Despite my bitterness, I still loved her and had faith in her. Until that morning. She was in the shower, singing a lively song that she played on her, possibly one by Ari Lennox or SZA, an empowering playlist. Her laptop's screen was still open when I walked by her desk to get the charger. Her draft of her graduation speech was colorful, with the title bold. I read about new beginnings, and it made me feel proud and interested. Then I began, and my fingers froze on the mouse pad, on the bravery required to let go of the past. After reading that statement again, my heart wasn't beating exactly the same. I also had to have the guts to let the past go. I wasn't the past. I was still living in our home and making our monthly payments. I was the one who had just purchased a dress for her graduation. I was reheating her leftovers and folding her laundry. I made a reservation at the eatery she had highlighted on Instagram. I scrolled down in the hopes of understanding what she meant. A sentence that acknowledged the years I had invested in her becoming the lady she now saw in the mirror. But all she saw were references to her mentors, instructors, and classmates, her mother, and, of course, her devoted best friend Kayla, who once informed me that I appeared too content to be mediocre. There was no reference to me or even gratitude for the man who covered all the expenses of her path, from pre-med to the morning she donned that gown and headgear. No mention of the man who constructed her meal. I simply sat in her desk chair and stared at the screen while he set his own on fire, my hands folded in my lap. The cursor blinked at me in a mocking manner as I attempted to remain composed in the face of an earthquake. Explain it. Perhaps she simply hadn't finished. Perhaps tomorrow I'd read a draft that featured me and referred to me as her rock, but that line to let go of the past persisted, and I nearly chuckled at how weak the hope sounded in my mind. It was a surgical stroke buried in the ground, and it was exact rather than poetic. Metaphors. And I was the object of her attention, as she emerged from the restroom, wearing her recognizable terry cloth robe and steam. She gave me a smile and a forehead kiss. "You're up early," I said, nodding. I cocked my head to check my emails. "But you didn't notice the speech draft, did you?" Then she whispered softly, "Don't judge too hard. It's just a rough cut." But she paused. I simply grinned and replied, "Sounds good. Rough cut?" That line was carved like marble. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. She blinked for a little longer than normal, perhaps wondering if I had caught something, as if she were prepared for what came next. However, she shrugged and left to begin applying cosmetics. That moment made everything I had been holding up clear, a dream where I was no longer welcome. She had already changed her story such that I wasn't even mentioned. The chapter titled, "What I Outgrew" already contained the 6 years I had spent carrying her. The worst part is that I was numb rather than outraged. When your spirit finally catches up with what for months your intuition had been nagging at me, I had observed How she stopped smiling at my jokes and how she expressed I dismissed it as stress, since she was introducing me less and less in public places, in her apartment rather than at our house. It wasn't stress. Rather, it was ambition disguised as detachment. And now that it was nearly over, I carefully closed her laptop. I threw nothing, didn't confront her, and didn't even ask her to explain, since at that precise moment, I came to the realization that I had become invisible to the person I donated everything for. That morning, when she passed me with flawless cosmetics and a shadow cast by her dreams, she believes she is beginning a new beginning. So will I, and mine won't come. I made a silent pledge to myself over mine. It will include something a bit louder, a bit colder, and a bit more permanent, like a graduation cap or thank you card. Over the course of 6 years, she never left her phone unlocked. I made a joke about how, if I even looked at it, she would grasp it as if it held national secrets. With a giggle that didn't quite reach her eyes, she would interrupt it as it buzzed on the table. "Privacy is healthy," she used to say. I concurred, until that morning, when she hurried off with coffee in one hand and keys in the other. She was running late for a student panel on patient advocacy, so I watched her dig through the other purse, half-sipped, front window, while drinking my own cup of reheated old coffee like I always did. Her phone buzzed on the couch when the door snapped shut, and I looked at it without suspicion, but the screen lit up. My initial reaction was to call her and inform her that she had left it behind. But that never happened, not even by accident. However, the notification flickered once more. "So, Kayla, did you file yet?" My stomach churned in a manner I hadn't experienced since something between feeling sick and falling over a ledge. During my mother's funeral, another message arrived before I could respond. "If you wait until after the wedding to process the initial pictures, they may appear strange. You don't want them all up in your graduation photos, heh." I gazed at the screen as though incredulity might reverse what I had just read. After reading, the dagger appeared. He still doesn't understand, but he must appreciate how helpful he has been. Let the ink dry. Allow the ink to dry, sis. It felt like I was reading my own obituary, as it was sent via text and surrounded by emoticons. Initially, I was unable to scroll and instead just sat there, phone in hand, heartbeat thumping like a warning siren against my ribs. With the exception of the blood flowing to my ears, the room fell silent. When I eventually opened the thread, I discovered months of messages concealed in plain view. Plans, laughter, grievances, and everything depicted in casual brutality between two ladies who were meant to love me, my wife and a reliable friend. "Until you're ready to ride a real bike, Marcus is like the ideal training wheel." Med school was the objective, not the marriage. That one devastated me, not because it was cruel, but because he's kind, but not suited for where I'm heading. That was precisely how she had begun to regard me during the past year, as if I were a holdover from her previous existence. The man who paid kept the refrigerator stocked for the classes and remained up to test her using flashcards, although it wasn't appropriate for the polished Marcus she created with that person. He didn't make the cut, so I didn't cry immediately. Instead, I just put the phone down. I stood in the center of our conversation, not wanting to touch the phone where she had placed it, like an unseen crime scene. Framed pictures of us from our graduation dinners, ski trips, and other events fill the living area.